I first noticed the dolls on a Tuesday night, the kind of night that feels ordinary enough to be forgotten. Rain tapped against the bedroom window in soft, impatient fingers, and the digital clock on my nightstand glowed 2:17 a.m. I remember the time clearly because I was awake when I shouldn't have been, staring at the ceiling, feeling watched without knowing why. The antique doll sat on the chair across from my bed. I was certain it hadn't been there when I went to sleep. Its porcelain face was pale, almost luminous in the darkness, with glassy blue eyes that caught the faint light from the hallway. It wore a faded lace dress, yellowed with age, and its lips were painted in a permanent, delicate smile. I told myself I must have moved it earlier and forgotten. That was the first lie I told myself that night. As I turned on my side, trying to calm my racing heart, I felt it again, that pressure in the room, as if the air itself had weight. The doll's eyes seemed fixed on me. I laughed quietly, embarrassed by my fear, and pulled the blanket over my head like a child hiding from monsters. That was when I heard it. A soft creak, the unmistakable sound of wood shifting under weight. I peeked out from beneath the blanket. The chair was empty. The doll now stood at the foot of my bed. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, but my body refused to move. My eyes burned as I stared, trying to understand how something without life could cross the room without a sound. Its head tilted slightly to the left, just enough to suggest curiosity. Then I blinked, and it was back on the chair. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I convinced myself exhaustion had caused hallucinations. I worked long hours, lived alone, and the house I'd inherited from my grandmother was old, full of creaks, drafts, and shadows. Still, as I passed the spare bedroom, I paused. The closet door was open. Inside, dozens of dolls stared back at me. Porcelain, cloth, wooden, some missing fingers, some missing eyes, all arranged neatly on shelves from floor to ceiling. I felt a cold ripple of recognition. My grandmother had been a collector, but I didn't remember this many. And I certainly didn't remember keeping them. At the back of the closet, carved into the wood, were words so faint they looked burned rather than written. They watch while you sleep. That night, I set up my phone to record. If something strange was happening, I needed proof. I placed the phone on the dresser, angled toward the bed and the chair, and pressed record before lying down. I left the light on. I didn't care how much electricity I wasted. Darkness felt dangerous now. Sleep came slowly, dragged in by exhaustion. I dreamed of eyes. Hundreds of them, watching, blinking in perfect unison. When I woke, the light was off. The doll was back at the foot of my bed. This time, it was closer. Its face was inches from mine, close enough that I could see tiny cracks in the porcelain skin, like veins. The smile was wider now. I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach drop, that it hadn't always been that way. I screamed and fell out of bed, scrambling backward until my spine hit the wall. The doll dropped to the floor with a dull, hollow thud. It didn't break. The phone lay on the dresser, dark and silent. I watched the footage in the morning, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. For the first hour, nothing happened. I lay still, asleep, the doll unmoving on the chair. At 2:16 a.m., the screen flickered. The doll's head turned. At 2:17 a.m., it stood up. The video glitched, skipping frames, but I could see it clearly enough. The doll moved in short, jerking steps, like something imitating the idea of walking. More dolls emerged from the shadows, ones that hadn't been there before, climbing out from under the bed, the closet, the corners of the room. They surrounded me. At 2:19 a.m., every doll turned to face the camera. At 2:20 a.m., the recording stopped. I packed a bag and left that day. I didn't look back. I booked a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon lights and thin walls. I slept with the TV on, lights blazing, heart hammering all night. For the first time in days, nothing happened. Until the second night, I woke to silence so deep it felt unnatural. The TV was off. The room was dark. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head. A small porcelain hand rested on the pillow beside me. I didn't scream this time. I ran. I drove for hours, crossing state lines, not stopping until the sun rose. I checked into another motel, then another. The dolls followed every time. Sometimes just one, sometimes many. Always closer, always watching. Desperate, I called my mother. She hesitated when I mentioned the dolls, her voice dropping. "Your grandmother never collected them," she said. "She made them." She told me the truth she'd tried to forget. Years ago, children in the neighborhood went missing. My grandmother claimed she could protect people from night watchers, things that slipped into rooms when no one was awake to see them. She believed that if you gave them something else to watch, something that never slept, they would leave humans alone. The dolls weren't toys. They were guards. And I had taken them out of the house. That night, as I locked myself in a brightly lit gas station bathroom, I felt it, the absence. The pressure in the air was gone, replaced by something worse. Hunger. The mirror fogged from the inside. Behind my reflection, shapes moved in the glass, tall and thin, bending at impossible angles. Their eyes weren't glass or porcelain. They were alive. The dolls had been watching them. Now, there was nothing left to watch me. The last thing I saw before the lights went out was my own reflection smiling back at me, wider than it ever should have. And somewhere in the darkness, I heard the soft, familiar creak of a doll taking its first step.